Okay, well, welcome to this work-life Doohickey meeting, and we'll just get right to the chase. Um, I previously asked everybody to think about um, certain situations, certain instances that might happen in the workplace, like substance abuse, divorce, uh, work-home balance, same-sex relationships, or workplace dating and relationships. And so, do I have a volunteer for who wants to go first to express how that issue would impact the workplace and how you would address that issue in the workplace, and maybe give some examples of what you've seen?
I'll go, I guess.
Okay.
I got divorced, I guess, and I did that on my paper too, so I'm going to cheat a little. But it says pretty much that when somebody goes through a divorce, they're confused, they're filled with fear and unsure on how to navigate the process. Their world is turned upside down. Triggering unsettling and distressful emotions. The effect of the emotional distress in the workplace can be devastating. Concerns go beyond just the financial ones, including potential for workplace violence related to the breakup, divorce, child custody issues. Pretty much it's hard. I mean, any life changing experience affects that person, and then a lot of times if they bring that effect to work, it affects everybody else. That's usually why I've noticed that when some people do go through divorces, they give them like a few weeks off so they can just get everything taken care of and back in order and get their adjustment back into life, because it does cause problems. They don't work as well, and a lot of times they're just distracted by other things. Some ways that they said are good to help out is to be compassionate, empathetic, and supportive. Don't act like that you're a problem solver, or if you haven't been through it, that you've been through it. Once the employee shares their personal situation, direct them to the appropriate resources, such as employee assistance programs or other appropriate individuals or departments if they have them. The one thing that people do like is being a good listener. When an employee speaks about his or her personal issues, be respectful. Show that you care. Like I said earlier, avoid saying that, oh, I've been through it too, I know what you're going through. Keep your distance and avoid becoming the go-to person for divorce issues. Maintain your role as a manager if you are in that role, and don't become the therapist, and avoid sharing personal details of your divorce, and don't provide advice. They also said that one great thing would basically be to refocus the employee so that he or she gets his information from an expert and proper resources. So that pretty much helps that. It covers pretty much everything. If the business has a great program like that, that would be something that they may want to look into. But yeah, at least for probably a month or even more, I think that person may have a hard time getting back into the swing of things at work. I mean, I never went through it, so I'm not really sure, but I'm just thinking.
Well, they say that a divorce is like a death. It's
Right.
next to a death, and it really is. I mean, it's just an emotional thing. My sister has a lady that's working under her that's going through a divorce, and she's like about had it with her because she makes mistakes. She like, oh, you never told me that, or how do I do this? I mean, she's kind of new on the job also, but she just is not learning anything. It's like she can't focus. So I don't know if you like just give them a little bit more time to help them adjust or what, you know. But it did say that they do make more mistakes because they're distracted. That's pretty much all. If I mean, you think about it, if your spouse or your child died, that would be all you could think about for
Yep.
every day, for quite some time. So a divorce is kind of the same thing. And
Well,
sometimes,
just recently at a job I'm going to, one of the employees, her husband drove. His line of work was transportation. He was driving one of those big rigs that was lugging gasoline at the time.
Mm.
Had a bad accident and then ended up passing away. And so our company treated the situation really well. They offered her ample paid time off to deal with the situation. She's coming back now, and she comes and goes, but she's getting back into the motion of work. It seems like she's coping pretty well. So,
That's rough.
I would think that work would kind of help a little bit, keep you busy so you're not like constantly thinking. But I'm sure in the beginning it's just too overwhelming to deal with.
Yeah, I've watched my mom go through a couple of divorces, and it's not an easy thing. In fact, like even just the aftermath, she started working after her divorce, and a lot of her time was taken in legal battles because there's quite a few kids still left at home, and it's just been a mess. And it's since calmed down a little bit, but that's been 8 years. So, that's especially divorce is a long-lasting one because you usually do have to still deal with that person, on a pretty consistent basis.
Yeah,
especially
if you
there's
have kids.
Mm-hmm. And then you have to deal with the kids and the problems that come there, and it's it's just not good. It's not the prettiest thing.
Yeah.
So, does everybody agree with what Christy had to say and what the other comments that were given of how companies treated or should treat individuals that have such issues? Such issues?
Yeah, with a big event like that, I think I like the idea of some time off for them. A week or two, whatever the company can give. I mean, it just kind of depends on the situation, yeah.
Yeah. And are there any other proposed solutions? Anything else that somebody?
Oh, yeah, there was one more thing. They said to refer them to EAP, Employee Assistance Program, if they have one at the work.
Mm-hmm.
And if not, I think a company should definitely offer, some counseling for them to be available. I think that would be really good. I'm sure a lot of companies don't, but it would sure be a nice thing to have as a benefit to let that person be able to go and do some counseling. It might help them not bring all their problems to work as much.
Right.
And also just for their kids to have some family counseling a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, thank you, Christy.
You're welcome.
Appreciate your comments. Do we have another volunteer?
I'll go next.
Okay.
So mine weren't explicitly talked about in this week's lesson, but I mean, I have a couple of experiences that go along with it. So I'll go ahead and start with the same-sex relationships one, because that's the one I originally had volunteered for. So one of my very favorite coworkers ever that I've ever had, and this was about 7 years ago. She was gay, and she was one of my very favorite coworkers ever. We're still friends on Facebook after all this time, and I believe that was because we shared a really mutual respect of each other, and we realized that sexuality really doesn't have a place in the workplace to judge people on. And a lot of what we've talked about in this semester has been discrimination, and sexual orientation is definitely one of those where it's illegal everywhere to discriminate against people because of their sexual orientation. But I think that there can still be a lot of stigma attached to it in the workplace. So I think my main point with this one is that you have to just respect people no matter what. If if some of their opinions or lifestyles or views you don't necessarily agree with, that's okay. There's still people with awesome experiences and really good backgrounds, and they were hired for this job for a reason, whatever job it is. So yeah, that's my thought on same-sex relationships. That you can't really judge people based on that at all.
I agree with you, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Because it doesn't matter what the person is or does, as long as they, they're able to do their job, and they have a lot of talents and gifts to bring into whatever workplace you have.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just a regular person like everybody else.
Yeah, I saw this really funny skit the other day, and it's wildly inappropriate, so I won't really share exactly what it said, but it was this office scenario where these two guys were talking to each other, and this one was very flamboyantly gay, and he was shoving it in this other guy's face, and just being really inappropriate about it. And this other guy was like, dude, this is work. Can we not talk about things like that? And the guy was like, the flamboyant one was getting all offended and judgmental, and oh, you can't stand that I'm gay. And he's like, the other guy was like, no, that's not it at all. This is just work, and that really has no place in the workplace. And the other guy was getting super offended. And at the end of the skit, the quieter guy, his husband walks in, and they go off to have lunch together. And the flamboyant guy just kind of sat there and was like, oh, well, this guy isn't rude. I'm just a jerk. And it was actually really funny. So it's kind of leaving that out. It doesn't really have a place in the workplace, no matter which side of that you're on.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's a good example. That's something that might become an issue too in the workplace, is if somebody who, say, is a minority in some way, whether it's gay or whatever, just in a minority some way, and they throw it in your face all the time, that could become an issue in the workplace. I don't know. What do you guys think would be a good way to handle that kind of a situation? If you were a manager, what do you think? Or, to have them stop doing that?
I would honestly just pull them aside and say, look, this has nothing to do with your minority, no matter what kind of minority it is. This is a workplace where we're all expected to act professional and treat each other with respect, no matter what. And if you can't handle that, then they would have to take some sort of disciplinary actions. But I mean, it needs to be based on respect to people's talents and abilities, and not, their skin color or their sexual preferences or anything silly like that.
Yeah, I agree. It would be something that a manager or someone would have to take aside and take care of it, stop it from happening.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Okay. Does anybody have any other experiences or input regarding same-sex relationships? Okay. Well, if it's all right, I guess I'll go ahead with my portion, which was on substance abuse. And actually, one of my first jobs when I moved up here to Texas was working in a body shop. And as you can imagine, it was a pretty diverse workforce. And as was mentioned in the readings, with a lot of the labor and the more dangerous positions, there's a lot higher probability to see substance abuse, or that is going to be an issue in the workplace. And there's one of my close coworkers that trained me, that mentioned when we went to the break room, and there was a poster that talked about using drugs and substance abuse and who to go to if you were having problems or knew somebody that was having problems. He talked about how he knew people that had issues with that in the workplace. And that was kind of an eye-opener for me because I grew up in a very Christian community in California and wasn't very exposed to that kind of stuff. And after that, it really affected me at how I felt I can trust people because I didn't know if they were one of the individuals he was talking about, if they were under the influence or taking some kind of controlling substance. And especially in a body shop where they're using power tools or forklifts or things of that matter, where if you are impaired in some kind of in some sort of way, you're actually risking the lives of those around you. It really definitely drove up the stress level and made it uncomfortable for me to go to work.
So did you know about any personally, or you just knew that he said there were people?
I knew that he said that there were people, and I knew that of individuals that talked about drinking on the weekends pretty frequently. But I didn't. They didn't consult me regarding that matter because I think they knew I was LDS and I didn't do that kind of stuff. And I don't know. I guess they saw me as a goody-goody and didn't want to bother with that.
That's all right. That's all right. Huh?
But something I wish the employers would have done is that there wasn't any real training on substance abuse or any kind of education whatsoever besides that sign that was near one of the break rooms, one of the two break rooms that were there. And so I'm not sure if I'm sure those that had those issues were not proactively looking for solutions or help at work. But if maybe there was training and that information was physically presented to them, they might have been more likely to seek help. Or like my coworker who knew those kind of people might have been able to more proactively help them.
I think that one's a really rough one because honestly, if it's just drinking on the weekends, most people do that, and it's really not that big a deal as long as it doesn't interfere with their work. But when it comes to drugs, they're kind of caught in this. If I go and seek help for it, that means I have to admit to using these illegal substances, which could cost me my job, it could cost me going to jail, it could cost me all of my relationships. And so I feel like that's just a really hard one for people to want to come forward and make improvements on, because the cost of it is pretty high, like the fear of what could happen. But, when it does start to affect your workplace and, people don't feel safe at work, if you come to work high, you're causing everybody to be in danger at work, honestly, not just yourself. You're putting other people's lives at stake. So, I don't really know a great way to handle that except for, frequent drug testing or whatever. But,
Well,
yeah, I just feel like that's a really hard one to try and motivate people to improve on.
well,
Yeah, I think it's a matter of getting caught and having to, remove them from work
in the
almost for that.
of that program, I believe it's a completely separate entity that isn't related to work. Like if you I know with illegal substances, there's some kind of liability to report those kind of things. I'm not sure how that works. I didn't really investigate the issue very thoroughly, but I don't know. In my mind, I'm thinking kind of like an AA meeting where you can say, I don't know. Maybe that's naive.
Yeah, so that would probably Yeah, that would probably be good, like having brochures about local help, self-help type things, so people could, like, find that information and use it if they really did want to get out and make a change without everybody knowing about it,
Yeah, that's kind of a discreet way to do it.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't hurt to do the training and then, show what there is, I think that would help, because then they might be more willing to look at those pamphlets or that poster with the information about meetings or something,
That's what I was thinking. Like, most companies do the sexual harassment training periodically, and maybe the drug abuse training, especially in those labor positions where it's more prominent. It might be helpful.
Yeah. Plus, doing actual, like, random drug testing and doing it consistently. The reading said that a lot of, like, smaller companies were hesitant to do things like that because it is kind of a costly thing, but that's honestly a necessary cost if you want to get the right employees working for you, is to make that a priority right from the beginning.
I think so. I agree.
Yeah. So, does anybody else have any experiences? No, it's kind of a tough one.
You mean with drugs or alcohol?
You don't want to know. Well, I can tell you.
See, I had a teacher in high school that was an alcoholic.
Yeah, I did.
So, I mean,
alcohol.
Yeah, and then there were the kids that would go and drink during lunch. There was that kind of stuff going on. I don't know. The thing I could see with the alcohol is a lot of people will go out and drink every night, and then they come into work late.
Hungover.
They're, have hangovers, and they can't hardly. So there's a lot of productivity there that's getting lost. So I think if you have that situation, you would have to reprimand them and, teach them not to drink during the week that much.
Do not come to work hungover.
Yeah, or else you'll lose your job eventually.
I've had coworkers that would show up to work super hungover or smelling like booze, like they'd been drinking already. And this is like at an 11 o'clock in the morning shift. So it's either leftover from the night before, or they just started really early in the day. And those people are just like, they were the most drama-filled, stressed out, constantly worried about their job for no reason people I've ever met. So.
Well, they're worried about their job because they're not doing it right. They're.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so I'm not sure if Kevin's going to make it.
Yeah.
We have 2 more topics.
I'll do workplace dating and relationships.
Okay.
The main thing that I see with workplace dating and relationships is it causes a lot of distractions on the job. So there's less productivity between the people involved. And then if you have a situation where it's a lot of young people that are, more than one person likes the same person, you can have confrontations. We had a manager, an assistant manager that liked a girl in our department, and he would come over all the time into our department and be talking to her. Now, she was not a productive worker anyway, but it just added to that. So, in general, I would say it wouldn't matter if because you're working with people, and if you're single, it's bound to happen that you might meet someone that, things click and you like each other. But I think you would have to, make it a rule not to bring that into the workplace. You know what I mean? As individuals, you'd have to be mature enough to do that. And I don't know, people in their 20s are probably harder at doing that than than maybe say some older people. But
I have got
I think you
the
definitely have the
funniest.
distractions and the less productivity.
Well, to be honest, my wife and I worked in the same company for about a year and a half, and it took a lot of our coworkers about the first year to figure out that we were married because we our mannerism was very professional. But after people figured it out, like shortly before I left, one of the managers started going out with one of her employees, and they started dating, and their productivity just went through the floor. Like they stopped working, and it was very aggravating for the other employees because they thought it wasn't fair that that employee wasn't working and the manager was distracted all the time, so she wasn't able to attend to the needs of the company. And so even though my wife and I kept the professionalism while we were at work, it set a bad example for those that could not. So I don't know.
Yeah.
At my last work, there was an incident where one of the cooks, because this was in a restaurant, so we're all, have you all worked at a restaurant before? Kind of. It's one of the workplaces where you are super, super, super tight and into everybody else's lives, no matter what. Just because you're constantly stressed out together and you work together so closely. So anyways, one of the cooks, and he was a good-looking kid, was kind of known for dating a bunch of our coworkers, and then he got involved with one specific one, this girl, and they were going out for a while, and they actually got engaged. They moved in together. It was super serious. And then all of a sudden, they broke up over Christmas. And it was crazy awkward because we were all still working together, but she didn't want to go into the kitchen, and he didn't want to work with her. And then her best friend was caught in the middle of them because she was friends with both of them. And it turns out the guy had the hots for his fiance's best friend, so he dumped her so he could go after this best friend figure. And the first girl moved away. The second girl dated this guy for a while. And then and then to end it all off with, those two broke up. And then finally the guy moved to go be with the first girl, and now they're engaged again. And it was just the worst working scenario because you constantly have 2 or 3 people crying at work all the time, and in a restaurant you have to go out and be face to face with people, and if they're crying they can't do that, so we would end up having to go and take over all of their tables, or the kitchen staff would have to cover the other this guy while the girls went into the back and yelled at him, and it was just a disaster. It was just such a mess. And then there was another couple who worked there, and the guy was a manager and got engaged to a girl who worked there as well. And it was kind of it's a rule at this place where if you are in a management position, nobody that you work with can be either related to you or married to you or anything. So she was going to have to find a new job, which I think she did. I hope she did. I've moved on since then. But, I mean, there are some rules when it comes to managers dating people that you can't, or there has to be very specific rules about what happens when you do. But when it comes to just regular coworkers, it can just be a nightmare. I've never seen that end well, ever.
I was just thinking while you were talking about the same kind of thing where one guy, he dates 3 or 4 of the girls. They're all kind of like, I could just see it's going to be a mess.
So bad. And he was really cute, and he was really friendly, and everybody liked the guy because he was just super nice. But he was also a huge player who happened to go after the girls that he worked with.
So would you in this scenario, would you say that it's better to see the employees in a relationship, or to, I guess it would affect the business more if they broke up and still had to work together than if they were actually seeing each other, but it disturbs everybody around them anyways, either way?
Oh, it's disturbing. Either way, it's going to affect the business negatively because, like Brandon was saying, with the coworker or the manager that started dating the employee at his place, there's two ways to go about relationships at work, either the way that he and his wife did it or the way the manager and the other person at work did it, where they become almost non-productive.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's the other half of that.
And
So-
it's hard to make rules about some of that stuff too. I mean, I can see where you have rules about management and people in your family under you and stuff like that. So, but it's hard to, like, you can't really monitor people's personal lives. You know what I mean?
Mm-mm.
Other than, I guess, you know what you could do is if there's a big should-do at work, like in the workplace, you could send those people home. You could just say, okay, you're home the rest of the day.
Mhm.
Come back tomorrow if you can handle yourself. And that might be the way to do it. And that would help people to keep those things out of the workplace if they learn that, do you think?
Well, if it's a manager that has an issue with it, it'd be kind of a hard thing to do, kind of productivity-wise. Maybe they're not very productive at work while they're in that kind of a scenario, but
Aren't
Well,
there?
managers, I think you can have rules for managers a little bit.
I was gonna say, aren't there some, like, and this might just be because I've watched The Office too many times, but aren't there, like, sometimes forms that you would actually have to go and fill out if you're going to be in a relationship with another coworker that explicitly state you cannot act like this at work, and consequences that may happen if you do.
well, what if
Is that an actual thing?
a smaller company that doesn't have as established HR or human
Yeah.
resources wise, and
Well, that's why I would say if you have, like coworkers dating who are having these problems, like Allison was talking about, where they're getting upset and all those kinds of things. In that kind of situation, the restaurant situation or other situations where you have that might come up, you just send those workers home, and they lose a day's pay.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll have to learn to control it or stay out of it one way or another. I mean, it would, if you had something like that, it would become known and people would be more careful about having that kind of personal stuff coming up in the workplace, I think.
that's true.
Yeah, I think it's good too to just have it right out there, because a lot of places have the handbook, and if you have it in there, all you have to do is say, you know what, this is in the handbook. You should understand what you can and cannot do, relationship wise. A lot of people have rules that if you get in a relationship, some person has to, like you were talking about, one person has to leave the job and the other one can stay, or you both leave. But if you have it, in the handbook, then pretty much it doesn't become a mess, and everybody knows what happens if you get in a relationship, or whether it's even peaceful within that company.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's the importance of those handbooks. Yeah,
Yeah.
good,
For sure.
good policies.
Okay. Does anybody else have any more input regarding that matter?
I'm good.
Okay. And I think the last one we have left is home or work-home balance. Is a volunteer who wants to?
I'll talk about this one if you don't mind,
Okay.
because I recently, I've talked about it a lot, but with this new job that I just started, I'm getting a whole new perspective on a work-home balance, where before, and this feels a little bit opposite of what the reading was talking about, but before, my job was crazy hours all over the place. It would either be 10 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night, or 4 o'clock in the afternoon until 2 o'clock in the morning, and it was just constantly back and forth and all over the place, and my balance wasn't very good because I would just be constantly running around trying to figure out when I was supposed to be at work and if I could do anything while I was at home, and it was just crazy. With this new job, though, I mean, I can stay up late at night if I want to, and I had to be at work at 7:30 in the morning, but that's not too bad because I get to be home by 5 o'clock, and I have all this time to, well, right now, do homework. But after this, I can actually get hobbies again. So this new form of like work-life balance, I've already seen has helped me like reduce my stress levels, and I don't know, I feel better now that I have a little bit more stable of a balance between work and home.
I agree. I don't know how people can be in jobs where their shifts are changing all the time. Like police officers, I have two brothers that are state policemen. I mean, and they'll work, for so long days, and they'll work nights, or they'll work, and they're all different days of the week. And I don't know. I don't think I would like that because it would be just so unbalanced. Though I think that they work on a 40-day rotation or something. So then if it's set for that 40 days, you might be able to handle it. But like restaurants and labor factory type work, that shifts work that's different. Oh, nurses. I have a friend
Oh my
that's a
gosh,
nurse,
their shifts are
and
crazy.
and she'll work days here. She'll work a 12-hour day here, an 8-hour day there, and then she'll have to work a 12-hour night shift and things like that. And I don't think that I would like that. I like to have a little bit better schedule of things,
Hmm.
In a different, I'd say home work balance. Especially for me right now, it's like when I was working and I was single, I never missed a day. But now when my kids are sick, I have to miss a day. Somebody has to take my shift for me. And then trying to balance out, well, my kid has a teacher's conference here, or they have this here, and I have to, say, well, I can't come to work today because my kid has this going on and I have to be there for that. So, family and business also is kind of tough for the working mom because it's just, it's like, well, if you can't send your kid to a babysitter if they're sick. So you end up missing more days than you plan on doing it, and then that messes up the workplace because somebody has to cover, what you're not doing for that day. So that's another direction
Yeah.
to take this as well.
And I think the article kind of talked about the working from home and stuff like that they had. I know my sister, she works in an office and she does payroll and stuff like that. And sometimes she's able to do some work at home, and that can help with some of those things. I guess if you have sick leave, you take the sick leave when your kids are sick, But yeah, that can be a big issue for employers, I think.
I had an interesting situation with one of my previous positions. I was excited when I was hired on because they told me of opportunities to work from home. But what I wasn't told was that we would be placed on a rotating schedule. We wouldn't get to choose our days that we would be home and when we would be in the office. And we wouldn't get a say on what we would work and what we wouldn't work. The schedule ranged from starting at 6 o'clock in the morning to ending at 10 o'clock at night. And at the time, I was in a one-bedroom apartment with my wife and a newborn, and it was very difficult to be working at home until 10 o'clock at night. My wife trying to soothe the baby so that she's not making a whole lot of noise, so it was very stressful. And I thought it was ironic.
So you were kind of forced to work? You were kind of forced to work at home on a certain time or something?
They asked me if I wanted to work from home, and if I said yes, then they put me on the rotating schedule, which included working from home, instead of the rotating schedule that would strictly be in the office, which wouldn't be past 6 o'clock in the evening. So it was a benefit and a curse, depending upon your situation.
I have a friend and her husband works from home all the time. He's either working at home or he's traveling to businesses and teaching them things, whatever he does. He's in computer stuff. And Yeah, I don't know exactly what he does, but
Whatever
he
that
does
is.
something. But he works from home, and he just has an office and closes the door, and he's in there all day, and he comes out, and he's in his pajamas, with a shirt on top.
That's good work.
But he travels all the time, though. I mean, mostly he travels. He's gone a lot, but it is nice, that he can be home and he can help do some of the things that they do, with the kids and stuff because of that when he is home.
I think it's really interesting how the work-life balance is just so crazy different between everybody. Like for me, I like going into a job. I like going to be with other people and feel like I'm working with other people. And so that's a good balance for me. But my husband is like your friend's husband, where a lot of his work he does from home in his pajamas. And when I see that, I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm working. I'm like, you have YouTube going on the TV. And he's like, yeah, but I'm working on my stuff on my computer. I'm like, how? It's working from home is not really something that I think I have the discipline for. But, with what he does, he has that kind of discipline. And he likes working from home more than he likes going into an office and working. So it's just so different with everybody.
I would think that taking these online classes would make it so you could see how you could get work done, actually, if you think about it. Because, I mean, I'll spend like several hours working on my schoolwork for the week. Like I'll do schoolwork on Mondays and Wednesdays, like just like purely all day long, so
Mm-hmm.
that I can have Tuesday free to go do certain things that, like, we did a co-op with my son. I did a co-op with my son, so Tuesdays we would be gone and we'd be doing things, and
Mm-hmm.
Thursdays. So I would do my work, and so I could see where working from home might be a good way for, like, mothers that wanted to be home with their kids. And the way computer stuff is, like my sister, she can remotely access her computer at work, and she can do stuff at home if she needs to. And that could be really good for a younger mothers, or people that just need to be home for different reasons.
Mm-hmm. With my work, though, it's really super collaborative, and I have to be able to talk to, and it might just be because I'm still kind of new, so I have to ask just tons and tons of questions. And so for me, it's easier to be able to go and find the person that I need to talk to in whatever corner of the hospital they happen to be at and ask them the questions that I need to, or turn to my boss who's right there, and I can see if he's busy or not instead of having to call or try and web chat. So with the stuff
Yeah.
that I do, it's easier just to be there in person.
Yeah, I
But
always,
there
Well,
are a
I,
lot of
I
things where you don't have to. So.
yeah, even with my schooling, just like Angela says, you understand by doing homeschool if you could, work from home. And I was like, I want to work from home, but I got kids running in and out of here. That's why I'm not on the screen, is because I have my, half naked baby on my lap, and my other kids running in and out. And so I'm just like, I can't get any work done. It's like I can't even start school until about 10 o'clock at night, when I know my kids will not be coming in my room, saying, Mom, 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 Mom. So I was like, well, the only time I can work at home is if I do like a daycare system. But I think
yeah.
once you're older and more independent, it might, work out a little bit better in my situation. But right now, working at home, I think, would just be a disaster for me.
Yeah. I had another student, and she did some accounting. She did some bookkeeping for businesses from home. I think you just have to. She would get up early in the morning, like 4 or 5 in the morning, and do work, do 2 or 3 hours of work, and then she would work again in the evening because she had really young kids too.
Well, that
But
sounds
I
like
think, yeah, but I think if you have, as your kids get older, you could probably do some. And that's why my friend, her husband, he has an office. He just closes the door, and the kids are not allowed to interrupt, you know, on his stuff.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but she's there, right, to keep them out of the room.
Yeah, she is. She is. Yeah, and you're by yourself right now, right?
That
Yeah.
is
So that makes it hard. But sometimes you have those single moms too that have to do that kind of stuff. So
true. Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, kind of like you, Christy. My dad works from home, and my little brothers are, gosh, they're 11 and twin 8-year-olds or 9-year-olds or something, and they don't stop moving and or yelling and or punching each other and or running in and out of his office all day, every day, except when they're in school or whatever. But oh my goodness, just seeing the stress that he goes through with that, I it drives me crazy.
Yep. Thanks.
Okay. Well, thank you for everybody's input. I think this was a very successful meeting. Does anybody else have anything to share before we go on to other matters and go offline?
No.
Oh,
Okay.
This has been a great semester. Do we meet again?
I think this is our last
no, we
one.
don't.